What I've come to understand is it's all about talent. To feel comfortable in the middle of all of this, you have to recognize your talent and make it grow. We can't all do that. Many of us, especially around here, we give up. We let it go. We settle down to doing nothing, or as little as fortune will permit us. Fortune around here, if it passes, does so quickly. It doesn't stop. It's always in a hurry. It always seems to have another appointment. If you don't have talent around here, you're just normal. But if you've got talent, the whole thing becomes extraordinary. I don't know how to play football. I've never known how to play. But my brother, he can play. You know, the problem in these parts is the heat.
It's not the heat.
So what is it then?
Something else.
So tell me.
You start.
Well, I think the problem is the heat.
Oh, all right then. Let's hear it.
Well, there's these summer evenings when the people sit around on their balconies, if they have a balcony, or wooden chairs outside on the ground floor if they have wooden chairs. You know, furniture with the chatter that fills the heat of the narrow streets of this old town with the sounds of dialects and all these other languages. You know, for some years dialect has given way to language which came from even further south and which bring with them the sound of even more heat and poverty and more desperate lands. You know, there's a woman, she's fanning herself while she checks the hem of her dress that she bought down from the market, make sure it doesn't show too much cellulite. A man, he's drying off drops of sweat before they drip onto his white ribbed vest. And then you got the kids, they're playing football, and they all speak the same dialect. But even if they were born further south, these quick kids, they quickly learn the language of the town. So there's this one evening, it's around 10 o'clock at night, the heat shows no signs of giving up, and the sultriness makes itself felt on the colorful skins of the people. Someone's trying to find a bit of solace in the breeze in the piazza, which always blows a little stronger than in the street. There's a slow procession of people, and seats from the houses in the old town square all fill up, and like every evening after dinner, tonight the square's filled with different colors, different languages, all grouped in different factions. In the corner over there on the right, you've got the Italians. At the center, the Albanians. Further over, you got the Moroccans. And even further over there, you got the Nigerians, the Polish, and the Libyans. And all that.
When you say it like that, it sounds like we were integrated. That's not true. We were never integrated. That was just a word bandied about by surveys and the news. In real life, at least in that town square, we grudgingly reached tolerance. You can't call it integration. Poverty put us all in the same boat. It was the only glue that kept us out of the crime cages. Each group had its illegal dealings, and when they argued, it was always about misunderstandings over the same overlapping interests. The Italians, they sold drugs up to the cafe. From the cafe on, the turf belonged to the Albanians. And every time someone stepped onto someone else's turf, it led to blows.
Well, there was this one night, you know, over in the square, there was this Polish guy waiting for a Moroccan to arrive who'd been surprised while he was busy robbing a shop in the Polish area, because only Poles could rob over in the area. So then this Moroccan should not dare go over and maraud for somebody else over there. When the Moroccan arrived in the square, the Pope came up to him, and they said things that were incomprehensible to each other, and continually raising the tones of their voices, and then they go at each other. It was too hot to do anything to separate them. They just beat the hell out of each other, and when they were full of sweat, they just dropped down, happy to be carrying on, sweating, happy to be beating each other, until this Libyan broke in to try and separate them. And he held the Moroccan so tightly so as not to let him carry on, but when the Polish guy saw the Moroccan being held by the Libyan guy, instead of stopping, he came up to the other and with even more force started raining punches on him. And it happened that a punch landed straight on the Libyan's nose, who at that point turned against the Polish guy. 2 against 1, the Polish brother of the Pole couldn't do anything else but save his brother. And so 4 of them were at it in the square at one time. The Moroccans thought that the 2 Polish guys against 1 Moroccan guy wasn't fair. And so they both threw themselves into the fight to help their compatriot. So 2 Libyans did the same. And then you got 2 more Moroccans, and then 2 more Libyans, and then 2 more Poles, until it becomes this big fight. At least 20 people are giving it to each other all at once, jumping around like some kind of crickets in the heat in the square. And then they weren't looking. And they ended up a little close to the Italians. And in the end, they kicked this old man who was sitting there and enjoying the scene, just laughing. At the sight of the blow inflicted on that old man, a dozen Italians decided that their country's honor was at stake, and so they threw themselves into the melee, the square pulsating with punches, slaps, kicks, spits, and the fight stopped like all fight stops, just like that. No reason. The fight finished, just like that. Well, they couldn't go on like that. The heads of each faction decided to meet each other the next day to make some decision. The meeting was held in the house of the Italian.
Did you go?
Of course I went.
And being with people like that doesn't make you sick?
Well, people like that. There are people like that everywhere.
Make you sick.
The meeting went straight to the heart of the matter. They couldn't all be bosses. They would have to find a way of creating some kind of order. So someone proposed having an annual raffle to decide who was going to be in charge. But that was thrown out. You couldn't really decide such things with luck. Also, because luck around here, it doesn't last too long. After a long discussion on the 4th bottle of cool wine served by the Italian lady of the Italian wife of the Italian, they decided, let's have a World Cup football championship. And whoever wins the championship is in charge for the next year, until the next World Cup. So they put the proposal to a vote, and it was unanimous. The first World Championship of clandestine World Cup football will be played in 2 weeks. Time enough to organize the teams, and of course, take the bets.
You know nothing about what really happened. Those are just the frills. Deep down, you don't know anything.
Well, tell us.
The field chosen for the matches was Largo Caverne. The goals were stolen from a field in a nearby town. The Albanians and the Poles took care of the goalposts. The Italians got the truck. The Indians put the goals up in the square. Now we just had to find a referee. Each team had to provide their own uniform, and betting was open to all. There was this Indian father. He went back home and he told his son to organize the Indian national side. His daughter and wife, they sewed the jerseys and the shorts. His daughter was extraordinarily beautiful. Not so much for being Indian, it was her eyes. Couldn't forget her eyes. If she looked at you, she didn't just look at you, she drowned you with her eyes. I have never thought that a woman could drown you without water, but she did. When I saw her, it was the first time. It was like losing my breath, like a breath I couldn't take, like ending up under the water with the whales. I was asked to play for Italy.
By me. You are what you are because I put you forward.
And now I have you to thank. I had played soccer when I was young. I had been good once. Past couple of years, I just played on Saturdays with my friends. I wasn't what I used to be, but I still hadn't lost my shot.
We all dreamed of becoming professional footballers, but being asked to play by the national football team, not even you would hope for that. So, I mean, it was a clandestine national team in a secret World Cup championship. But even in this little part of the world where we live, you represented your country. You know you can take pride in that.
When I saw her for the first time, it was in an alley in the Old Town Center. It was a few months before the championship. I was walking along to get some water from the fountain and take it home on the corner of a side street. And I stopped to take a breather to cool down. And she came out of the ground floor apartment where she lived. She stopped and touched her hair, which was gathered up into a ponytail, and she laid it across her right shoulder. And as she did it, she turned to me. And then I drowned. She looked at me for just a few seconds, just enough time so that I could fall into that deep abyss. And she went home. India had never been so close as in that moment. I tried to find a way to contact her. Her brother and father would not have allowed me to see her alone, so I kept going back to get more water. From that day on, my house was full of water. Every time I came to that corner, I would stop, just to try and see if that miracle would take place again. For like a week, I would go and nothing. But then 7 days, there she was, sitting on the step. She looked at me again, and this time, she smiled. I had the jug of water in my hand. I was in shorts and a t-shirt, and I wasn't breathing. It wasn't that my heart had started beating faster, like they always tell you. It would just stopped beating. Don't look at me anymore, I thought, and don't smile, but she wouldn't stop. You're killing me, I thought, but she just kept smiling until they called her from inside the house, and she went back in. I tried to keep it together, and I fainted. At home, my mother said, from now on, your brother is going to fill the water jar. No, I said, I'll go. But if you don't feel well, no, Mom, I'll go. Is that clear?
Well, we had to make the teams. But who was going to be the referee? The referee has to come from a different country. Where are you going to get one? The referee has to be neutral. Maybe Switzerland. Switzerland's neutral. But there's no Swiss immigrants around here. I mean, who from Switzerland would move here? I mean, maybe South Africa? I don't know any South Africans. Maybe the Maltese. There aren't any of those either. Peruvian. I know a Peruvian. It's this one woman, but I think she's in Spain right now. Maybe the Ivory Coast. I don't think there's anybody. Maybe. Well, Albania. Now, Albania has a team, right? That won't work. Well, who are we going to get? I don't know. It's no good looking for the nationality because we'll never find just one of anyone. Immigrants don't come here by themselves. They come because their brothers came or their uncle or their friend, but they don't come alone.
Nigeria?
If Nigeria was here, they'd have a team. Don't you think? I mean, no. It's got to be a profession. We have to find someone who is professionally above things, like a policeman. Oh, I'm serious. There you are. It could be a local policeman in a uniform. Of course, you got to have a uniform, right? What kind of a policeman would it be if you don't have a uniform? So I'm thinking we ask this guy we know. He's a certain Nunzio, Zagaria. He was chosen the referee because he was a retired local police officer. And then the linesmen were these two traffic cops we knew, Mario Ieva and Lorenzo Putana, but the latter, he quit because everybody kept making fun of his name. So he had to replace him with Ricardo LaRusso, who was he was some kind of camp guard or something like that. But anyway.
The goalposts were stolen on the night of June 16th. They were taken to Caverne and set up. That morning, the children woke up. They couldn't believe their eyes. They had goalposts. They guarded them with their lives. And then the pitch was marked off and a permanent parking ban was imposed.
It was a small pitch, to play 11 on each side. So we decided that there would be first string of 7 players, and then you would have 5 in reserve, maximum of 5 changes per match. You play 2 halves like normal, right? You have 45 minutes each. And the police chief asked, but have you got permission to do this? I said, of course we got it. Yeah, from the mayor. Yeah, from the mayor, from the prefect, from the commander-in-chief of the cavalry, and from the people of Caverne. Zagaria understood that it'd be better off if he didn't press me on this matter. So on the night of the 18th of June, 126 crash barriers were stolen. 16 kids and 8 three-wheel vans were enough to pick them up. The football pitch was roped off so that no one could come onto the pitch. The first match was on the 25th, Italy-Albania. A clandestine World Cup single elimination tournament had been born.
I didn't see the Indian girl anymore.
You didn't see the Indian girl anymore because she had things to do.
What do you know about things that she had to do? She was always at home because, well, they decided that since the Indians weren't any good at football, they'd at least have beautiful jerseys. They were sewing them by hand, one by one, using material from 10 stolen carpets. I wanted to see her because that day, I mean, it's happened to everyone I know, but I couldn't help thinking of those Indian eyes. Day after day after day, walking past her house, successful in nothing but digging out a sweaty furrow of my hope. And then one day I found her at the fountain and I spoke to her. I said, "Can I?" She said, "What?" "Can I fill your jugs?" "No, I'll do it." And she turned her back to me. I offended her. I didn't know what Indian families were like when it came to love. I mean, I didn't know if they were like us over there, where before introducing yourself to the parents, you have to have at least, 2 sets of twins together. I didn't know. And in the meantime, she refused my help. She wouldn't look at me. I had offended her.
The people who were called upon to serve the clandestine Italian national team were very happy they could wear the blue jersey. Each of us chose a nickname, so we had Mario Zoff, Pasquale Tassotti, Pietro Rummenigge, Aldo Platini, Carlo Cabrini. What was your name?
I didn't have a name. In fact, I was the one who said that in the Italian team, we couldn't have either Rummenigge or Platini. Huh? So they changed their names to Pietro Altobelli and Aldo Bottega.
You remember Michele Baresi?
How could I not forget? How could I not remember Michele Baresi? Who could forget him?
Yeah, he was our central defender, like Franco Baresi, the real one in Milan. He was good at football, but he was really a depressive. He was always angry because he said he didn't have a job. And I told him that not working was no excuse for being depressed, otherwise we'd all be depressed all the time around here. But he said, no. Michele Baresi said, do you know who I envy in this world? The old people. I say that you should give people a retirement, a pension when they're between 18 and 30 years old, and then afterwards you can start working. What can I do being out of work now and then retiring when I'm an old man? No, you should give me the pension now. I'll set up some money, I'll marry, and then I'll start working, and I'll keep at it till the day I die.
Michele Baresi did not reach the end of our clandestine World Cup. He had heard about a woman who was 78 years old and was still not happy to live alone. The day before the Italy-Albania match, he went to meet her. He went into her expensive house in the center of town, one of those big houses that are still standing between the tower blocks. And he met the woman who was still very attractive despite her age. He sat on the armchair of her living room and sipped on an Orangina. When he came to play, he said, "I've fallen in love." We were ready to play.
Well,
We'd fallen in love.
Almost. The only ones who hadn't actually found a trainer were the Libyans. They counted themselves and realized that there were only 22 of them in the whole town. And of these, only 8 of them were any really good at football. So the trainer of the Libyans was thus Peppino, this African guy, kind of dark-skinned gentleman who led the skinhead fans of his local team. He didn't understand much about football, but he had some interesting chants. News of the World Cup got to the boss of the Chinese. Hey, you didn't say anything to us. And you were right. We had forgotten about the Chinese. There are 26,000 of us in this town. How could you forget about us? We could form 500 teams around here. I said, just one will do, One will do. One is enough. You're in. So you play on the 29th of June against who, he said? Against Brazil. China, Brazil. We'll fuck them in the ass, he says, and that'll be nothing new for them because they're all transsexuals around here. Hey.
All in all, we had put together a pretty good team, except for the goalkeeper. Mari was off. We had allowed our guy to pay for the shirts and the shorts and the boots and the jerseys. The blue jersey had choice cuts written on it because he was the owner of a butcher shop. But he also insisted that he would play goal. And we only discovered later that he was such a fan of Zoff's that he'd actually named his own son Dino. But this guy weighed 250 pounds and his only talent was standing still. But he paid for everything, so... The Albanians played well. We didn't expect that. They weren't like Argentina or Brazil. They played the ball every time. When I was out in the field, every now and then I would look out among the people all around the crash barriers and see everyone who had come to watch us play.
Well, news of the secret World Cup had already spread through the whole town. And now, even at the first match, there were so many people who were curious to see how Italy was going to play.
They were curious to see all these strange countries, Sudan, Albania, Libya, countries that would never have been in a real World Cup, but who, under clandestine conditions, and only under clandestine conditions, had the same rights as other countries. 15 minutes into the first half, we scored. Across from the left into the penalty area for our center forward, who jumps up and heads into the crossbar, but the lower half of the crossbar, just to be clear, one zip. From the edge of the pitch, there came, I don't know how many shouts, and I turned and looked to see if maybe I would see those Indian eyes watching the match and watching me, but I didn't see her. She wasn't there. She wasn't there because she was at home to finish jerseys for the first and only match to be played by India that evening under the street lamps and the lights that we had borrowed. Let's put it that way. Borrowed. From a man who put on concerts in the squares.
Well, borrowed because we didn't want to steal them from him. So no one else could actually steal them. We had to stand guard for his lights. The electricity we took from a street lamp. That was stolen. That's the way a clandestine kind, World Cup works around here.
The match ended 3-1 us. I scored the second goal, and for the first time I realized that man cannot live on football alone. For the first time it came into my mind that the goal, scored without her seeing it, had no value. As if I had never scored at all. As if her watching it would give that goal and all that I had done some truth. Without her watching me, I had felt like I didn't exist, as my life was not full. I was just simply waiting for her to see me.
But the next match would be against the winner of the India-Poland match. We could only wait for the evening to see who would qualify. No one knew it, but thanks to the people I knew from the end of that match, all the players became crowd favorites. It was to my credit. For this reason, I was named the official chaperone of the Italian side.
And we couldn't pay anyone for anything. Not even for a bottle of water. Everything was donated. And that day, for the first time, we did what would soon become a tradition during that clandestine World Cup. This lovely Italian woman prepared melanzana parmigiana with little potato pieces for the whole team. And after the match, we ate because, after all that effort, we had to eat at least something, she said. And that was why during this World Cup, instead of getting thinner, we all put on a couple pounds.
The India-Poland match started at 9 on the dot. Nunzio refereed the second match of the day, and he didn't manage to run around as much as he would have liked to. So he kind of stood still and refereed that one, trying to see what he could see and trusting what the crowd said most of the time. That's why he gave this bullshit penalty kick to Poland after about a half hour in. The dazzling jerseys of this Indian team under the lights didn't help the ref see so well either. The light was glaring all the time, and Zaccaria watched with his eyes half closed, but what lovely, lovely jerseys. I mean, the ladies on the edge were all complimenting. He looked like a Valentino fashion show out there. Shirts like that you don't even find in the market, even if you go early, you know.
And it was the Indian girl's brother who committed the foul that went led to the penalty. Standing behind the barriers, I tried to find her in the crowd. From the field, I would have seen her straight away, but from outside it wasn't so simple. I walked around a couple of times until I finally saw her back to me. Her hair gathered up in that ponytail laid over her shoulder. There was sweat on her neck, dark under her black hair. And I knew what would happen. I knew it. I willed it to happen, and it did happen. She turned as if she had felt my presence. She turned and saw me. She saw me with those eyes of hers. And then she turned back to watch the match. Just a moment before the Pole took his run up and scored. When India was still losing 1-0, she called me to her side. I walked without breathing. I put my elbows on the crash barrier in a way that seemed very easy and relaxed, but probably did not look that way at all. She asked me, "What do you think the team should do?" And I told her to wait. Let me see some of the action. They were playing badly. They had no business playing football. I wanted to say that they should retire, but her brother and her national team were playing, so instead I said, they have to use the wings more. They have a tall forward, they have to cross. What does cross mean? Cross the ball. What's a cross? I looked at her, and in that moment, I didn't know anything about crosses. I didn't know anything about forwards, about the wings, about soccer. I knew nothing. And she walked away to the bench and said something to her father, who said something to the trainer, who said something to a player, who made an opening on the wing, like I said, and from the wing came a cross, and from the cross came a header from the forward, and India tied the match. She would have hugged me. Probably. If she hadn't been so well brought up. An Indian. And I would have married her if I hadn't been so stupid.
Well, a draw is not what we expected. So they carried on playing in extra time until India let up another goal, and the match ended with the Indian team being knocked out. The team shirts were sold to a woman who then unsewed them all and made a new, beautiful, enormous, shining carpet. The matches were only a way of getting power and wielding it for a year. They were also momentarily very good for business because of all the clandestine betting. Each faction had arranged to collect its own bets, and it ended up so that everyone in the town stopped supporting their own national team and started cheering for the team that they had laid a bet on. Italy, us, we were among the favorites, and if we won, it wouldn't earn you very much. You had to bet 10 euros to earn 12. It wasn't worth it. But if you bet on teams like Libya, that made much more economic sense.
The problem was that some players who were actually playing began to bet. And they didn't always bet on their own side. So it became possible for someone to bet against their own team to earn more money. There was an Algerian player who had bet against Algeria, and at the end of a match against Senegal, when it was still tied, he suddenly scored an own goal, and no one believed it was a mistake because he kicked it hard and decisively at a high angle. Suddenly, this Algerian defender turned into a Senegalese forward, and he made his opponents win. He made a whole lot of money, but they beat the shit off him before he got off the pitch.
Yeah, and that's why players started behaving themselves and stopped betting, so as not to risk getting beaten the hell out of. But the others were still betting pretty strongly. Some of them bet on Italy winning and laid down copious amounts. Others changed their bets from one match to another.
Michele went back to the house of that old lady, and we went along to take a look.
Yeah, I borrowed a ladder from someone who had a shop outside the house and who had come to watch the matches. So we put the ladder up on the side wall of the house and we started peeking.
We didn't want to be nosy. The problem was that we were worried about Michele falling in love. Now, who knows what he could have gotten up to if the situation had degenerated. We did this for his good and for the good of all of Italy.
I saw the whole scene because they told me to come down, but I didn't come down. I saw the whole scene. Michele enters from the door to the left of the room. He comes down the wing and he's going to sit on the sofa in midfield. The lady sits on the sofa too, but far away from Michele. I watched this woman. She's put on a matching blue silk two-piece. She looks really soft in that dress. So much so that you avoid looking her in the face, and she didn't look so advanced in years if you didn't look her in the face. She held a glass of wine in her hand and talked with Michele. He had a matching jacket and tie that he had borrowed from his dad or his brother or somebody. The suit was kind of tight on him. He held a glass in his hand, but he never took a sip. At that point, this girl dressed in a waitress outfit enters, and she puts a tray where no one can get to it. She goes back up the wing and disappears halfway along the enemy's half. The lady offers the tray to Michele, who takes a cake, and he puts it in his mouth. While he chews, the woman comes up to him and takes advantage of the fact that Michele has the wine in one hand, the cake in the other, and she kisses him. Score! 1-0 to the old lady. So I turned from the ladder and I said, she kissed him.
We couldn't believe it. Michele Borese kissed by a 78-year-old woman.
We decided it'd be better to pretend like we didn't see nothing. Now, nothing had happened. He might have been embarrassed. I mean, how are we going to tell that?
The Indian girl's brother stopped me in the street. Do you like my sister? A lot. And you can't see her, know that? I know. Not unless what? I have to place an important bet, betting everything I have, and I have to put it on Italy to win. And so, I let you see my sister, but only after you won the championship, and I'm on the bet. And if I don't, if you don't win, you don't see my sister, you see her only in your dreams. Thought about it for a moment. He looked at me. I didn't know whether to accept what might come of it. Losing the World Cup would have meant not seeing her again. And winning it could have meant going out with her for, I don't know, maybe a few times. Nothing more. So I said, it could be done, but you have to let me go out with her at least once. When the World Cup finishes. No, straight off tonight. And tomorrow I will let you know if I accept. All right, come and get her at 8. But at 10, you have to be back home. Midnight, 10:30, 11:30, 11. We won't say anything more about it, okay? No. If something happens to my sister, nothing's gonna happen, but if so, don't worry! That evening I got ready, and I tried not to overdo it with the cologne. I always hated colognes that are too strong. So I didn't like it when I arrived below her house. And I saw her come out all colors, wonderful, with her eyes lightly made up, but she'd overdone it with the perfume. Her father looked at me like he looked at me like you look like a poor footballer who just wants to steal my daughter. Her brother didn't say anything. He just repeated the appointed time with his hands. 1, 2, 1. I think that meant 11.
Who lent you the car? Who lent you the
You,
car?
all right, you lent me the car.
The first string of the Italians without a car? Huh?
An old, black, dirty, smelly piece of shit Fiat.
What do you mean?
I gave it a good clean inside too.
It was clean. It was
Clean. It stank like I cleaned it, but I didn't have time to repair the muffler, and it made a noise like a tractor.
Well, you're right about the muffler.
I'm right about everything.
About the muffler. Don't go overboard.
When I started it up, she smiled, and I said, "It's not mine. It's my asshole of a brother who doesn't look after it." We set off, and we went towards the sea. We arrived a few minutes before that magical hour when the light of the day gives way to the evening cool and the colors slowly change, passing through light blues, and then they darken in color, and there are tiny lights in the sky facing the sea with the towns behind.
Oh, he's such a poet, isn't he?
Why are you going out with me? She asked. I don't know. Because I'm Indian? No, not so much because you're Indian. It's your eyes. What about my eyes? I don't know. What is it about them? She stopped looking at me and she turned her face to the sea. It was the perfect place to lose yourself, to forget everything, to drown. You're Italian. You have to forget about me. Why? We don't have anything. We don't have money. My father couldn't even give me this dress. It's my mother's. It doesn't matter what your father can give you. Yes, it does. It matters for us. I can't give you anything either apart from my brother's Fiat. She laughed at that. We turned towards the car, and it looked like a broken scarecrow in a car park in front of the sea. Around the Fiat, other cars, all of them more beautiful, tried to diminish its specialness. I didn't like your car, she said. But now I'll repair the muffler, I said. We left again. It was 11 o'clock. The next day, her brother asked me, "Well then, do you accept?" "I accept," I said. "Bet everything on Italy. I will become world champion and I will date your sister."
The next day was the China-Brazil match. All the Chinese from the town gathered around the barriers. Where they had hid themselves on the other days of the year, who knows? They arrived with their smiling faces and put themselves down there in the front row. There weren't so many Brazilians. They all really lived by being, transvestites. And the 12 professionals in the area had all joined the team, so there weren't actually any fans. We saw straight away, as soon as the Brazilians came onto the pitch with their skin-tight, sexy team outfits, that these Chinese were very sensitive people to these sleek, irreverent charms of their rivals. On the other hand, the Brazilians treated the Chinese like they were children, whose behinds kind of needed a little spanking. And these Chinese seemed to like that. Another small detail. These Brazilians, they played football pretty well. The Chinese did nothing but run around like a fire drill or something. It was in the middle of a scuffle over a corner kick that one of the Chinese took the opportunity of embracing his opponent with his right arm. Then he tried to block him with his left arm too, and then ended up kind of like embracing him with this passionate enthusiasm. With his eyes closed, his arms tight around that extraordinary Brazilian body. He tried to enjoy that physical sensation that had nothing to do with the match. And penalty. But on the field, in the area, you had to know how to restrain those kinds of passion. So Nunzio, the referee, was forced to blow the whistle and give a penalty for Brazil, a penalty to excessive love. The Brazilian understood, and instead of getting angry with the Chinese guy, it was so beautiful. He just bent down, took his head in his hands, and kissed him on the forehead. The Chinese player had just had to be replaced. Anyway, Brazil won the match 7-0, and they became the favorites to win the whole thing.
How about that girl from Morocco who ran away with that Polish defender just the day before the Italy-Poland game?
Yes.
Great news for us. He was a good player. Tall and strong, and that's probably why the Moroccan girl did not let him slip through her pants. We saw them running away at about 3 in the morning in a car that he had stolen. The car was found undamaged at the train station where they had caught the train that had whisked them away to probably a better place. And then there was that Serbian forward who went out and he went to ask for the hand of a beautiful Nigerian girl. But he was met by the father with these words, "You, white man, have no right to marry a black beauty." But he didn't give in. And during the Nigerian match, he went to her house and barricaded himself in. He was shut in there with her for 2 days, and he only left when her father agreed to marriage.
One night, we heard the sound of shouts and the clink of beer bottles coming from a house down in the old town. It was Livia, and they had invited or hired a group of Ukrainian prostitutes who weren't very interested in football at all, but were guaranteed a night's worth of overtime. Whether it was love or that integration that everyone's been talking about around here, I don't really know. But it's true that in those days in the town, there were alliances made which had been hitherto impossible, as if the people saw each other for the first time, as if they had suddenly discovered that your eyes and not the rest of you show that you too belong to the human race.
And Michele came to tell us that the sons of the old lady didn't want it. They would not agree to their marriage.
Marriage? What the fuck are you getting married, I asked him. Of course I'm getting married. I love her. She's got a pension. I'll get married and be a kept man. You really like that 78-year-old lady. Age is not important. She's beautiful. She gives me wine. She gives me cakes. The other day, she kissed me. What? Yeah. She has nice breath. Michele, that's enough. Fine. But now her sons, they don't want us to get married. Her sons don't want their mother to marry a player for the Italian side. Please, let's not joke about these things. I can't come to the match. You gotta look for somebody else to play. You can't come. You gotta come. I can't. I've got an appointment with her 2 sons. I've gotta convince them of this marriage. Take care.
That's why we played against Poland without a center back. But we won 4-2. and we were in the semifinal. We would play against Brazil, the transvestites, the strongest transvestites in the world. The day before the match, the Indian girl's brother came to see me. Do you like women? Yes, I said. And so what are you going to do with these Brazilians? What should we do? Remember, if you become world champion, then you go out with my sister. I have made a bet, no mucking about. I don't go out with transvestites. I want to see your sister tonight. Tonight you won't be world champion. Let me see her, or tomorrow we'll lose against Brazil. You're a bastard. And you are a dick. Okay, but bring her home at 10. 11, half we did that thing again. So at 11 I picked her up, and she was surprised by the quietness of the Fiat.
Well, I had changed the muffler. I couldn't let my brother, the first team for Italy, I couldn't let him go around with a broken muffler. The mechanic didn't want me to pay. But he made me promise that my brother would score a goal from a free kick. Because after all, we are Italy. That's how we said it. We are Italy.
She had such a strange look on her face. She didn't say anything until I parked the car facing the sea. She got out, still silent. What's up? I said. Nothing. Go on, tell me what's up. Are you going to leave me? Me? You. But we aren't even together. That's what you say, she said. Why? Are we together? I asked. Of course, I wouldn't go out with you otherwise. I had no idea what the hell was going on. I don't know what love is, or what love's not, or how it starts. I needed a plan.
This is the plan. The defense spends all its life saying, be careful with the girl. If she scores, we won't be able to make it up. Ask help from your midfield. He understands the danger and he puts himself into defense, and the years pass like that with the defense and midfield always avoiding everything. And it's okay. It's easy because love can't find a space. He can cross, he can try and push forward, up the center field. He can try what he wants, but the fullback moves over. The midfield covers, and nothing happens. Nothing happens until one day, a striker, unmarked, through a chance bounce of the ball, stops and discovers that it's much better to take a risk than to defend. And he shows it to everyone, and love just faints. A plan that's been tried in training, passes two people, reaches the edge of the penalty box, and scores. That's how love works.
That's how it worked with me. We were together, and I still didn't know it. She had drowned me in her eyes, and I didn't know what to do. I was swimming with no life vest, no floaties, no mask, no flippers, and I was lost, and I was at her mercy, and she was worried about everything. You won't leave me now, huh? No, I won't. I won't leave you. I won't leave you.
She had it worked out all right. Don't leave me. You'll marry me, and I'll get Italian citizenship, and then, you know.
Shut up.
Okay, I'll shut up.
She came to see the match. There was a crowd of Italians around the barrier. Some were there to bet, some were football lovers who just wanted to see how we would fare with the transvestites. Perhaps a lot of them wanted to see the transvestites in their skin-tight shirts and shorts. I have to say, honestly, that it did have a certain effect, seeing them dressed up like that. They had an effect on Michele, a defender who was a mechanic. As soon as he came on the pitch, he opened his mouth, he rubbed his eyes, and a guy from the other team said, "Hello, sweetness. Do you want to touch me?" I didn't let myself get distracted. The transvestite interested me more as a social phenomenon than in a personal way. I mean, I had the Indian girl. I wasn't interested in anything else. I'd look at her leaning on the barrier with her hair laid on her left shoulder, and she didn't smile. Perhaps she didn't smile so I wouldn't lose my concentration. We started to play, and immediately the shouts from the edge of the pitch made themselves heard.
Nunzio felt the emotional weight of the match, but he was, and had to be, impartial like most police chiefs are. who is on a pension. And so he unfairly awarded us a penalty.
I took the penalty shots. I went to the penalty spot, and silence fell over the crowd.
You could only hear the cries of the Chinese guy who had been kissed on the forehead by the transvestite. He was saying, block it, oh, block it. But to Nino, this farmer quickly silenced that by a knock in the head.
I took the run up and kicked it to the right of the goalie's left. Goal! 1-0 to us. And at halftime, we were still winning 1-0. Our goalkeeper, Butcher, he stopped a good shot with his face. It was red. His nose was broken. Fuck Brazil, he said, while he stopped up his left nostril. I'm so sweaty, said a transvestite to Michele. He pretended not to be provoked, but then later he ran up to the transvestite and said to him, "half 10 at the Fountain Square, how much?" "I'll do you a good price. All in, whenever you come." The match started and the Brazilians were playing better than us. The ball went out just near the barrier where the Indian girl was, and the Brazilian player, well, once he took the ball, he looked at her and said, "Have you really got together with him?" And he laughed. He shouldn't have done that. He shouldn't have done that. At the first ball that he played, I did what I have always tried not to do. I remembered what they had taught me in training a long time ago. So I went up to him, this player who had derided me, and I placed my cleat on the back of his foot. Everyone heard the Brazilian scream, and I heard the sound of bones scraping under my foot, and he stayed down. The Brazilian wasn't substituted because they didn't have any other players for that match. And I didn't even get a warning. I just carried on playing. Italy against Brazil finished 1-0 to us. We made the finals. At the end of the game, when I met India and I asked her to come out with me that very evening, she asked me, "Why did you break his foot? You shouldn't have done that." She left. Just like the time at the fountain when she turned her back and completely ignored me.
From that time on, you should have understood something else. All the little signs that one has to know how to interpret. Otherwise, what happened to you is bound to happen to you. It was easy to understand what was happening. She had to stay in Italy. She had no means of doing so. One of them was to find someone to fall in love with her and try to marry him. That way, she would have become an Italian citizen. It's that simple. After all, it wouldn't be the first time this has ever happened. You know, I remember this guy who had come back from a long holiday over there in the Ukraine with this really beautiful girl. I mean, she was infinitely more beautiful than anything he could ever hope to have on his side. And so this should already make you suspicious. But no, not this guy. They leave the Ukraine, they come over here, and she, before leaving, she says to him, "Listen, can my cousin come too? She's like a sister to me. I beg you, don't say no, baby, please don't say no." What does he do? He doesn't say no. And also this, it should make you a bit suspicious. But you come back, and what do you start doing, for Christ's sake, with a partner like that and her even more beautiful cousin? He gives in to the temptation and to the request of the two girls to open a bar. And this lad, he starts up a nice little mortgage. He borrows money, he sets to work in the bar. At first, this thing goes all pretty well. And the customers in the bar, instead of being served straight away by those two beauties, well, they don't mind waiting. A little longer for a crowded table with these two girls in there. It's always full of people, so much so that in about 2 years, this guy's paid off all the debts. He's opened a joint account in her name too. And after a while, one day, we see that the bar isn't open. We see them both coming down from the town hall, and now she's married by the Lord Mayor. In person, by their side, is the cousin, who's giggling. And now that giggle should have made him suspect something. But no, he doesn't. From that day on, the partner doesn't go to the bar anymore. He has to go, because the debts that remain are still his debts. And the cousin doesn't go to the bar anymore. Money starts disappearing from the account, and all this should make you a little suspicious. And here, a suspicion comes into his mind finally. People weren't going to the bar because those two beauties aren't there to look at anymore. And after a few weeks, his missus runs off with somebody from the town, some rich guy who's thicker than a tree trunk, but he's rich, he's handsome. And the cousin blows too. And he's left with the debts and the customers who come to the bar and laugh and say, "Hey, how's your wife?" He went off. We never seen him again.
It's not how it went with me.
And how'd it go for you?
Shut up.
No. Why don't you say how it went for you?
The day before the final.
Go on. How'd it go?
The day before the final, we were invited to the wedding of Michele Barese. He had sorted himself out.
Yeah, the wedding was held at a house and we all went. It was the whole team. Michele's father, he was a mechanic, and his brother too, but he didn't want to know about learning the trade. His father looked at him from a corner and said, "You see your wife? She could be my mother. Don't think about it. You see your son is happy. How disgusting, how shameful." Even the woman's son stood away from us, watching how brutish we were. We couldn't even approach the buffet without giving the impression that we hadn't eaten for about 2 months. And they were even more horrified when we proposed a toast and we forced Michele Barese, their stepfather now, to take a drink from a bottle of bubbly. What didn't go down so well was that their stepfather was much younger than either of them. And the one who was 50 years old would now actually have to call his son Daddy. But he was only 27 years old and played in the Secret World Championship with a blue jersey with choice cuts written on it. Mario Zoff let his son Dino come in with the present. It was a whole pig lying on a bed of lettuce with an apple in his mouth and one in another place, but we don't have to go into that right now. However, I said to this 50-year-old son, "All you need is love." And he looked at me like I was cursing at him. He didn't even reply.
The wedding was officiated by Nunzio Zagaria, who was a retired town hall employee. He was allowed to take the place of the mayor. And after the rites, I went up to Michele and he said, "Hey, you'll play the final, right?" He said, "I talked with the lady." "You still call her lady? She's your wife, isn't she?" "I'm still not used to it. I spoke to my lady and she said that I could come." "She's not your mother, she's your wife." "I understand, and now I need to get drunk. Who knows what she might want from me tonight." And what should she want?
With the wedding over, everything was ready for the final.
You want to talk about the final?
Yeah, I do.
Now, I need to say something first that you don't know.
Say it.
After knocking out Brazil, we were the favorites again. The final was Italy-Morocco, and we were the favorites. And one day we went out to get something to drink in a bar that faced Santa Caverne, and there were 6 of us there. Apart from the butcher, the goalkeeper, we were all first stringers. You know, we were joking and laughing. Every now and then we would wave at someone who was passing and egging us on. And at one point we saw this car pull up, and these 2 guys get out, jeans and t-shirt. And behind them, this old fella, big belly. We all know who he was. Everybody knew who he was. Especially you.
So?
Came towards us slowly. Before he arrived at the table, the bar owner had already brought him a chair. He sat down all sweaty, stinking, with his fat belly short of breath, and he says, "Italy has only caused me trouble. And now that you are the favorites, you have to even things up. Don't worry, we'll win against Morocco, sure thing. You understand nothing. You have to do just the opposite. I have to lay a big bet, and if I bet on you, what do I win? I win little or nothing. I have to bet on Morocco, and I must win a hell of a lot because I will bet a hell of a lot. So you go on that pitch and lose. All clear?" They all looked at each other. We didn't know what to say. He looks right at me. He says, "And if there's a penalty and you score, you know what we'll come and do? Just get it wrong and everything will be fine. Free kick, you kick it out of play. Penalty, you kick it high, and I don't even want to see you get near Morocco's goal." And if it's 0-0 at the end of the match, you do me a nice own goal and end the story. All clear? You didn't know what to say, but what could we say? You don't mess with these people. Just don't mess with them.
They came on the pitch for the final at 8:45 on the evening of the 7th of July. The Moroccans knew they were a weaker side, but anyway, they'd hoped for a result that night that'd make them the first clandestine World Cup champion. Italy, with their shirts and with choice cuts written on the front, well, they seemed to have the better players. They were the choice cuts.
Before the match, my Indian girl came to see me. We had gone out again, and she apologized for treating me badly. She told me she was going to come to the match. She reminded me that I had to become the world champion, otherwise her brother would not let me see her. So you see how it is? On the one hand, threats from mafioso, lose or he will take me out. On the other, her Indian brother, win or I never see her again.
So about a half hour in the first half, Nunzio whistles for a penalty for us.
In the first half, about a half hour in, I had to make one of those decisions that changes everything.
He went to the penalty spot.
I went because I took the penalties and because I had to decide what to do. On the one hand, the threat from this crime lord, muck up the penalty. On the other hand, India score. I've always been the guy who never really wants to get involved. And between us, when I could, I would turn my head the other way to avoid trouble. I was never one of those brave people, the kind of people that defend the weak. At most, maybe I would have called the police, but only after I turned the corner when I was sure that nobody could see me. Gangs always frightened me, and I never really wanted anything to do with them. But this time it wasn't about fear. I had India to think about. I had my life to think about, what I wanted to do, my hopes for the future. Now I didn't just feel fear. Now I had something else to defend. And maybe that's what leaves the field wide open for these hoodlums. The fact that when we don't have desires in life, we don't have passions or certainties, aims that we really want to achieve, things that we have to defend, but then, when we find them out, then the fear has to stop, and it has to stop. The gangster, he looked at me, and I looked for India's eyes, and I found them, and I decided I'm going to score. I didn't care about the punishment. What could they do to me? Beat me to death? Fine. But I would have been world champion. So I went to the penalty spot. Everything went quiet around me. I took 2.5 steps back as usual. Zagaria whistled. I bridged the gap between me and the ball, and I kicked it. The Moroccan goalkeeper guessed the direction. He dove. He caught the ball. Penalty saved. The gangster smiled. India looked down. I wanted to shout that I hadn't given in to the threats. I'd missed a penalty. I wasn't a coward. I missed. But the gangster was laughing, and the Indian girl wasn't even looking at me.
It's true. In places like this, we're all condemned. Everything's already written, already said, already finished before you say it. It's true we seem resigned to the fact that that's how things work, and that's how they'll always work. Even when you play the clandestine World Cup, it remains hidden from the television and from the papers. But the powers that be run these things. No, for them, nothing's hidden. It's all out in the open, all to be managed, decided, imposed. It seems to be our fate around here, to remain forever crushed by our own inability to feel.
A person is someone who knows how to defend and knows how to attack. A person is the sum of all those days when he shut up, and the scream that sooner or later escapes from him is the statement of a whole life. It's like saying, here I am again. But it seems that in these places this can never happen.
Fear. These guys' strength, the silence that they create around you, the shame. And that's why we've missed all the penalties for the last 300 years. We've missed them all, and they've awarded us even more penalties. But we've always been so afraid of being alive. It's always better to miss them rather than take a responsibility.
In the second half, there was a free kick on the edge of the penalty box. The gangster knew that I would aim high, as he had advised me to do. The Indian girl knew that I had to score to keep on seeing her. No one else knew anything. Only my teammates wondered. One of them came up to me and asked her, What are you going to do? Score, what else can I do? And then what? And then we'll see. I hit the free kick over the low ball of the Moroccan players towards the goalpost on the right of the keeper, and the ball went in. 1-0. The crowd began to shout, "Choice cuts! Choice cuts! Choice cuts! Choice cuts!" And the gangster went green, and India was beautiful, and none of my teammates were rejoicing, just me. I was running around like a loony, back and forth, no longer afraid of anything.
You know, it's strange celebrating the World Cup championship when the world doesn't know anything about you. That evening we were invited to a dinner by the butcher who played in the goal. Out in the country, he brought I don't know how many pounds of sausage and meat for roasting. And his son Dino put on this big barbecue. And every time he brought a plate of meat already roasted, hot, well salted, you felt privileged because he was serving food to the World Cup champions. This guy's father was the champion butcher of the world. Someone else sold used cars, but he was champion of the world too. And all of the rest of us, even if we were unemployed, we were still world champions.
The Indian girl was ready, only lightly perfumed as I had asked. And a Fiat with a world champion waiting inside for her. I had run out of socks, so I took a pair from my father's drawer, and he said, "You can go where you want, do what you want, but if you're missing something, you always come home." Champion of the world. Bullshit. Find a job and leave the Indian. Wives and cows, you know. "I promised you," I said. She smiled one of those smiles that decide your whole life.
Really?
Really. Now shut up and listen. The Fiat started up straight away, and there was a beautiful breeze that July day, and the sea a few miles away, and there was a kiss waiting for me on that beach. The first kiss between Italy and India, with our eyes closed and the sound of the sea in our ears and our eyes still closed, and the perfume of India along the whole beach and our eyes closed, and the noise of a car that stops. The most beautiful kiss in my whole life, as long as the eternity of a few seconds, the memory that will never go away, her body for the first time so close, and the noises of steps that walk down over the stones, and our eyes still shut, so that I can enjoy her eternity, and she mine, and a hand on my shoulder, and a boot in my face, and then nothing. When I came to, it was late evening. We were in the country, and in front of me, there was the gangster whom I had not obeyed, and his two guys in jeans and t-shirts, and the Indian girl was on the floor, their hands tied, without anything on. It was dark all around, and there were no lights to be seen. What have you done? Nothing. Nothing. We were waiting for you to wake up. They put a handkerchief in her mouth, and only when I tried to react, I found that my hands and my feet were tied, and I couldn't get up. I couldn't do anything. Hold still. Don't touch her. Keep still. You missed the penalties, the free kicks, go over the bar. Now you'll see, all right? You moron. I was forced to watch the jeans of one of them being lowered and hear the laughter of the other, and to see her legs that tried to close and resist, and hear her screams stifled by the handkerchief that they had put in her mouth. And I saw the other one enter her, and then the other, and she stopped screaming and crying, and she seemed dead, and I don't know where to put my tears. I didn't know if I would survive such a sight. I didn't know nothing about nothing, and then they went and they left us there. She was naked. She had fainted, and I was in tears, tied up. When I married her, my father said, "Wives and cows from your own town." I married her because we deserved each other.
At the wedding, the whole team came, but no one seemed to want to laugh. Did they know?
No, we knew anything.
She had such a colorful dress. He'd squeezed into one of Dad's suits. It was strange. A world champion and an Indian who had drowned people in her eyes. We didn't know what music to play. We didn't know what to eat. We didn't know about anything.
No one knew anything. Her mother cried, but for the wrong reason. I didn't manage to make her laugh. I didn't manage to do anything. It was as if the dirt of that night hadn't come off.
You know, at your wedding, it did seem like someone had died. It was this taste in the back of my mouth. It was bitter, like something that won't go away. And I remember seeing our father for the first time wiping a handkerchief over his eyes and saying that he had a cold. You guys weren't there. You didn't see our mother looking at him as if it was his last day. Why didn't you tell me?
What should I have told you?
I could have done something about it. I know these people.
That's why I didn't say anything. Read it.
I have to go. Sorry, but every day on the street I was afraid of meeting him again. And once I did see one of them. In the shop, he was paying at the cash register. And he looked at me and he started laughing. What else can I do? I can't keep remembering everything. I have to forget things. I'm not leaving you. I'm running away from them. I'll wait for you. What else should I do? What are you going to do?
I have nothing to do with that jersey anymore. Those that did this, they wear the same jersey, the same colors. I'm leaving. I am not the champion of this world.
Wait, how are you going to get there? You can't walk. The problem with places like this is that you don't ever know if you've won or if you've lost. You know, in football you have the final whistle, it comes and you know. But here, how do you know if you've actually lost? Maybe it's decided by a knockout too. Poverty versus education, 2-0. Delinquency versus poverty, 3-1. Violence over delinquency, 2-1 in extra time. Violence is champion of the world. Delinquency takes second place. And the bronze medal goes to poverty.